Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching, whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France. I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The air was thick with tension as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the rugged landscape of Altair Base. Captain Elara Voss stood at the edge of the runway, her heart racing. She could hear the distant rumble of engines, a sound she had once found comforting, but now filled her with dread. The squadron was preparing for takeoff, and she was not among them. "Stay behind, Elara," her commanding officer had said. "You're needed here to coordinate the landing zone." She clenched her fists, biting back the words that threatened to spill out. The truth was, she didn't want to stay behind. She wanted to fly, to lead her team into the fray, not watch from the sidelines while her comrades faced danger. The memories of her last flight lingered like a shadow, but she pushed them aside. If she didn't take command now, who would? As the last of the planes lifted off, a jolt of determination surged through her. The fear of being left behind morphed into an overwhelming urge to act. She turned sharply on her heel and marched towards the command center, her mind racing with plans. Inside, the atmosphere was chaotic. Officers shouted orders, their voices blending into a cacophony of urgency. Elara's instincts kicked in. She began sorting through the chaos, her training as a pilot and leader coming to the forefront. "Captain Voss, we need you here," a young lieutenant called, pointing at the screen displaying the live feed from the drones overhead. The enemy was moving fast, and the squadron was running out of time. Elara took a deep breath, her mind racing. She could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on her shoulders. "Get me the comms. I need to speak to the squadron leader," she commanded, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Within moments, the static crackled to life, and she heard the familiar voice of Major Dax Renault, her closest friend and mentor. "Elara, we're engaging with enemy forces. They're more numerous than we anticipated. We could use your tactical input." "Then let me take command," she replied, her heart pounding. "You need me up there. I know the terrain. I can guide you through." There was a pause, and she could almost hear Dax weighing the risks. "You're not cleared for combat, Elara, you know that." "Rules don't matter when lives are on the line," she shot back, her frustration boiling over. "You know I'm capable. I won't let you down." With a resigned sigh, Dax relented. "Fine, but you're taking responsibility for this. I'll brief you in." As Elara grabbed her gear, adrenaline surged through her veins. This was her moment. She raced to the hangar, the weight of her decision settling into a fierce resolve. The squadron needed her, and she wouldn't let fear dictate her actions any longer. The roar of engines filled the air as she climbed into the cockpit, her heart racing. The familiar scent of leather and metal enveloped her, grounding her in the present. She strapped herself in, her hands steady on the controls. The world outside faded as she focused on the mission ahead. "Major, I'm ready for takeoff," she said, her voice calm and clear. The squadron was a mix of seasoned veterans and new recruits, all looking to her for guidance. She felt the weight of their eyes, but it only fueled her determination. "Copy that, Captain. We're counting on you," Dax replied, and she could hear the tension in his voice. As the planes thundered down the runway, Elara felt a rush of freedom. She was no longer just a captain. She was a leader, a protector. The sky opened up before her, and she took a deep breath, focusing on the mission ahead. The landscape below transformed into a patchwork of greens and browns as they climbed higher. Elara's pulse quickened as she scanned the horizon for signs of the enemy. The mission was to provide air support for ground troops advancing on a fortified position, but the intelligence reports suggested it would be anything but easy. "Enemy contacts at 2 o'clock, one of the pilots shouted over the comms, and Elara's heart sank. They were closer than expected. "Form up, squadron! Let's show them what we're made of," she ordered, her voice steady and commanding. As they maneuvered into formation, Elara's mind raced with strategies. She visualized the battlefield, recalling every detail she had studied during training. She needed to act quickly to protect her team. "Engage on my mark," she said, her heart pounding as she felt the weight of responsibility. This was her moment to shine, to prove that she belonged here, in the sky with her squadron. 3, 2, 1, engage! The air exploded with sound as the squadron opened fire. Elara's hands flew over the controls, weaving through the chaos while keeping her eyes trained on the enemy. The adrenaline coursed through her body, sharpening her focus. She was in command, and she would not fail. But then, a sudden explosion rocked the air, sending a shockwave through the cockpit. Alarms blared, and Elara's heart raced. "What was that?" she yelled, trying to maintain control. "Captain, we've lost one of our fighters," a voice crackled through the comms. "No!" Panic surged within her, but she forced it down. "We need to regroup. Stay close." As the chaos unfolded around her, Elara felt the gravity of her situation. The squadron was under fire, and she had to make choices that could save lives or lead to disaster. She took a deep breath, channeling her fear into determination. "Stay focused. We can't let them break our formation." "Let's cover each other," she commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. The squadron responded, rallying together under her leadership. They moved as one, dodging enemy fire and returning fire with precision. Elara felt a rush of pride as she watched her team work together, their trust in her evident. But the battle was far from over. As they pressed forward, Elara could see the enemy forces regrouping, preparing for a counterattack. The stakes were higher than ever, and she had to act fast. "Listen up, squadron. We're going to flank them from the east. Follow my lead." With a fierce determination, Elara guided her team into position. The roar of engines filled the air as they dove toward the enemy, adrenaline fueling their every move. This was the moment she had fought for, and she would lead them through the storm. The world outside the cockpit was chaos incarnate. Explosions lit up the sky, casting fleeting shadows over the landscape below. Captain Elara Voss tightened her grip on the controls, her heart a drumbeat of adrenaline. They were committed now, plunging headfirst into the fray, and there was no turning back. "Squadron, stay sharp," she called over the comms, her voice steady even as the tension crackled like static. "We're flanking from the east. Keep your eyes peeled for enemy movements." The planes flew in tight formation, the sleek bodies of the fighters weaving through clouds of smoke and debris. Elara's mind raced as she scanned the terrain, her instincts as a pilot and leader kicking into high gear. Every decision mattered. The lives of her squadron depended on her command. "Captain, we're picking up multiple enemy signatures ahead," Lieutenant Marachen's voice came through, tinged with urgency. "They're regrouping. We need to act fast." Elara felt the weight of responsibility settle like a stone in her stomach. "All right, Mara. Let's split into 2 groups. You take half of the squadron and create a diversion. I'll lead the other half straight into the heart of their formation." "Understood," Mara replied, her tone resolute. With a rapid-fire series of commands, Elara split the squadron, watching as Mara's group veered off to draw the enemy's attention. The moment felt surreal, a blend of fear and exhilaration. Elara was no longer just a captain. She was a warrior leading her team into battle. As they approached the enemy's position, Elara could see the dark shapes of tanks and soldiers moving in the distance. Her heart raced as she prepared for what was to come. "Engage on my mark!" she shouted, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Ready when you are!" came the chorus of voices through the comms. 3, 2, 1, engage! The air erupted with the roar of engines and the crackle of gunfire. Elara's fighter dipped and soared as she unleashed a barrage of missiles toward the enemy tanks. The explosions were deafening, sending shockwaves through the air. "Direct hit!" shouted one of the pilots, a note of triumph in his voice. But the enemy was quick to respond. Suddenly, a wall of anti-air fire erupted around them, tracer rounds lighting up the sky like angry fireflies. Elara's heart dropped as she watched one of her pilots spiral into a tailspin, smoke trailing behind him. "Mayday! Mayday!" The voice was frantic, filled with sheer terror. "I'm hit! I can't—" "Stay calm! Stay calm!" Elara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're coming for you!" She felt the weight of her squadron's lives pressing on her shoulders. "We have to cover him! Form a protective shield!" The remaining fighters moved in close, their wings nearly touching as they formed a barrier against the enemy fire. Elara's eyes narrowed in focus as she directed her squadron, weaving through the hail of bullets, heart pounding like a war drum. "Get him out of there," she urged, desperation creeping into her voice. "We can't lose anyone else." The squadron pressed forward, launching missiles and firing rounds at the enemy positions. Elara could see the chaos unfolding on the ground, soldiers scrambling, tanks exploding. It was a dance of destruction, and they were at the center of it. "Captain! Enemy reinforcements are incoming!" Mara's voice rang out, panic lacing her words. "Hold steady!" Elara commanded, her mind racing. They had to finish this before they were overwhelmed. "Aim for their command center. We'll disrupt their coordination." Elara's squadron shifted tactics, focusing their fire on the command center. Explosions erupted, and she could see chaos unfold among the enemy ranks. But they were still outnumbered, and the enemy wasn't backing down. "More fire incoming!" another pilot shouted, and Elara felt her stomach drop as the enemy unleashed a barrage of anti-aircraft fire. "Break formation! Evade!" she yelled, pulling hard on the controls as her fighter dipped and rolled to the side. The ground below erupted in flames, and she could hear the crackle of destruction all around her. "Captain, I'm hit!" a voice cried out, panic rising. "I can't!" "Stay with me!" Elara shouted, her heart racing. "You're going to be okay! Just keep flying!" She watched as the pilot struggled to maintain control, spiraling toward the ground. Elara's heart sank. "We can't leave anyone behind," she thought fiercely. "Cover me!" she yelled to her squadron. "I'm going in to get him!" With a fierce determination, Elara dove toward the struggling fighter. The enemy fire rained down around her, but she focused on her friend, the world narrowing to that single point. As she maneuvered closer, she could see the pilot's face, a mask of fear and pain. "Hang on! I'm almost there!" she called, her voice steady despite the chaos. The enemy's fire intensified, and she felt the heat of it all around her. "Just a little closer," she urged herself, pushing the throttle to its limit. At the last moment, she reached out, her heart racing. "Grab my hand." With a desperate lunge, the pilot reached out, and Elara pulled him into the safety of her cockpit, just as an explosion rocked the air behind them. They shot upward, narrowly escaping the firestorm below. "Thank you, the pilot gasped, relief flooding his voice. "Stay focused," Elara replied, her heart still racing. "We're not out of this yet." As they ascended, Elara quickly assessed the situation. The squadron was battered, but still fighting. She could see Mara's group engaging the enemy head-on, drawing fire away from them. "Squadron, regroup," she commanded. "We need to hit them hard." With renewed determination, they dove back into the fray, Elara leading the charge. Explosions erupted around them as they unleashed their firepower on the enemy positions, the chaos of battle fueling her resolve. But the enemy was relentless. As they pressed forward, Elara felt a sudden jolt, and alarms blared in her cockpit. "What now?" she thought, panic rising. "Captain, you've been hit!" Mara's voice came through, urgency in every syllable. "Keep fighting! We can't give up!" Elara shouted, fighting to maintain control as the plane shook violently. "Pull back, Captain!" Dax's voice cut in. "You need to land! No, we're not retreating!" Elara's voice was fierce, a battle cry against despair. "We have to finish this!" The squadron rallied around her, their trust in her unwavering. Elara pushed through the pain, focusing on the mission, on her team. They would win this battle together, no matter the cost. The battle raged on, the air thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning fuel. Captain Elara Voss maneuvered her fighter through the chaos, her hands steady on the controls, but beneath her calm exterior, a storm brewed. Memories of her past crashed over her like waves, threatening to pull her under. "Stay focused, Elara," she whispered to herself. "You're not alone." Suddenly, the voice of Lieutenant Mara Chen broke through the static in her headset. "Captain, we've got more enemy fighters incoming! They're flanking us!" Alara's heart raced as she glanced at the radar. A swarm of enemy jets was closing in, their dark silhouettes cutting through the smoke like predators. "All units, regroup!" she commanded, her voice firm. "We need to hold our formation!" But as they tightened their ranks, a burst of enemy fire erupted, hitting one of their own. "No, Kyle!" Elara cried as she watched her wingman's plane spiral out of control, trailing smoke. "Captain, we can't lose anyone else!" Mara shouted, urgency laced in her tone. "I know!" Elara snapped back, her heart heavy with guilt. She had led them into this mess, and the thought of losing another pilot was unbearable. "We need to press on. We can't let them win." With a fierce determination, she dove toward the enemy, her squadron following suit. The roar of engines filled her ears as they unleashed a volley of missiles, explosions lighting up the sky. But the enemy was relentless, and Elara could feel the weight of their losses bearing down on her. "Captain, we're taking too much fire," Mara shouted as they dodged incoming rounds. "We need to pull back." "No, we'll regroup and fight," Elara shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. She could feel the eyes of her squadron on her, their trust in her unwavering. She wouldn't back down now. But then, the worst happened. A blinding flash lit up the cockpit as an explosion rocked her plane. Alarms blared, and Elara struggled to regain control. "Mayday! Mayday!" she shouted, panic flooding her voice. "Captain, you're hit!" Mara's voice crackled in her ear. "I can't pull up!" Elara fought against the controls, her heart racing. Just as she thought all was lost, she remembered her training. "Focus, Elara! You've got this!" With a surge of adrenaline, she forced the plane to level out, narrowly avoiding a crash. "Regroup with me," she called to her squadron, her voice steady despite the chaos. As they formed back into a tight formation, Elara felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had lost too much, and she wouldn't let it continue. "We need to be smarter," she said, her mind racing. "Let's split into 2 groups. Mara, you take half and create a diversion. I'll lead the other half straight into their command center." "Understood," Mara replied, determination in her voice. As they executed the plan, Elara felt a surge of hope. They were fighters, and they would not be defeated. "On my mark!" she shouted, adrenaline coursing through her veins. 3, 2, 1, engage! The squadron dove towards the enemy, unleashing a hail of firepower. Elara's heart raced as she led the charge, her instincts guiding her. They were fighting not just for themselves, but for each other. But the enemy was prepared. A wall of fire erupted, and Elara's heart sank as she watched another plane go down. "No, not again!" she cried, desperation clawing at her throat. "Captain, we're surrounded!" Mara's voice came through, urgency ringing in every syllable. "Stay close!" Elara commanded, forcing herself to stay calm. They had to keep fighting. "We're not done yet." Just as they began to regroup, a surge of enemy fighters swept in, and the air erupted in chaos. Elara's squadron was outnumbered, and she felt the weight of their losses pressing down on her. "Captain, we can't keep this up!" Mara shouted, panic creeping into her voice. "We'll find a way!" Elara replied fiercely. "We're fighters! We don't back down!" As they pressed forward, Elara felt a renewed sense of clarity. This was her moment to prove herself, not just to her squadron, but to herself. She would lead them through this storm, no matter the cost. The chaos of the battlefield faded as Captain Elara Voss landed her fighter at the makeshift base. The roar of engines replaced by the distant sound of sirens and the low murmur of worried voices. The adrenaline that had propelled her through the fight was now giving way to exhaustion, but Elara pushed through, knowing that her team needed her. As she climbed out of the cockpit, she was met by the anxious faces of her squadron. They were battered but alive, their camaraderie shining through the grime and fear. Elara felt a swell of pride mixed with concern. Each of them had fought valiantly, and their trust in her was palpable.
"Captain!"
Mara Chen rushed over, her eyes wide with urgency.
"We lost Kyle back there. I couldn't do anything."
Elara's heart sank at the mention of her wingman. I know, Mara. We all fought hard. We'll honor his memory. I promise. Mara's face fell, and Elara reached out, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. You did everything you could. We all did. The enemy was relentless, but we survived. That's what matters. As they moved toward the makeshift command center, Elara noticed the others gathering, their expressions a mixture of relief and grief. Among them was Lieutenant Samira Patel, who had always been the quietest of the group, but possessed a fierce spirit. Elara approached her, sensing the weight of unspoken words. Samira, Elara said gently, I saw you covering our six back there. You did an incredible job. Samira nodded, her eyes reflecting a storm of emotions. But it wasn't enough. We lost him, Elara. I should have done more. Elara felt a pang of guilt. She was the captain. They looked to her for strength, yet she was reeling from the loss just like them. You are not responsible for what happened. We're a team, and we fight together. We'll learn from this. Together, Samira echoed softly, her gaze steadying. As they settled into the command center, Elara took a moment to breathe, her mind racing with thoughts of strategy and survival. The squadron gathered around a table, a map of the battlefield spread before them. Dax Renault, her mentor and friend, stepped forward, a grave expression on his face. Listen up, team, he began. We've taken heavy losses, but we can't let that break us. We need to regroup and plan our next move. Elara felt a surge of gratitude for Dax's leadership. He had always been her anchor, guiding her through the storms. Dax, we need to honor Kyle's sacrifice. We should strike back harder this time, she suggested, her voice steady. Agreed, Dax replied, meeting her gaze. But we need to ensure everyone is ready. We can't afford to lose anyone else. The squadron nodded, but Elara could see the shadows of doubt in their eyes. We've faced impossible odds before, she said, her voice rising, with confidence. And we've come out stronger. We fight for each other, for everyone we've lost, and for everyone who's counting on us. Mara spoke up, her voice trembling. But what if we lose more people? What if... Elara interrupted with a fierce intensity. We cannot let fear dictate our actions. We are fighters. We will honor our fallen by continuing to fight, not by cowering in the shadows. A heavy silence fell over the room, and Elara could feel the weight of her words. She had stirred something deep within them, a fire that had dimmed but not extinguished. She saw their resolve strengthen, and it filled her with hope. Let's take a moment to remember Kyle, Dax said quietly. He was a brave soldier and a good friend. We owe it to him to keep fighting. As they shared stories and memories of Kyle, Elara felt the bond between them solidify. Each story was a reminder of their shared experiences, their struggles, and their victories. They were not just a squadron. They were a family forged in the fires of battle. Captain, Samira said, breaking the reverie. What's our next move? Elara took a deep breath, her mind racing with possibilities. We need to gather intel on the enemy's movements. If we can identify their weaknesses, we can strike where it hurts them most. Dax nodded in agreement. I'll assign teams for reconnaissance missions. We need to know what we're up against. As plans were discussed, Elara felt a sense of purpose ignite within her. She wasn't just leading a squadron. She was part of something bigger, a mission that transcended individual losses. They were united by their shared desire to protect one another, and that bond would see them through. A sudden knock interrupted their meeting, and a communications officer entered, breathless and urgent. Captain Voss, we've intercepted enemy transmissions. They're planning a major offensive against us tonight. Elara's heart raced at the news. We need to act fast. Prepare the squadron for immediate deployment. We'll meet them head-on. As the team sprang into action, Elara felt the weight of responsibility settle over her again. But this time, it was different. She was not just the captain. She was the heartbeat of her squadron. They were in this together, and together they would fight.
Remember,
She called out, her voice ringing with conviction.
we fight for each other. We fight for Kyle. Let's make sure his sacrifice was not in vain.
With a renewed sense of purpose, the squadron moved as one, preparing for the battle ahead. Elara felt a fierce pride swell within her. They were more than just soldiers. They were a family, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and violet as Captain Elara Voss and her squadron prepared for the battle ahead. The air was thick with anticipation and anxiety, a palpable tension that seemed to electrify every soldier on the base. Elara stood at the edge of the tarmac, her gaze fixed on the distant mountains, where the enemy was rumored to be assembling. "Captain," Mara Chen approached, her brow furrowed with concern. "Are we ready for this? I mean, really ready?" Elara turned to her, sensing the weight of her friend's doubts. "We don't have a choice, Mara. We can't let them strike first. We need to take the fight to them." Mara nodded, though uncertainty lingered in her eyes. "I just don't want to lose anyone else, not after Kyle." Elara felt a pang in her chest. Kyle's loss weighed heavily on them all. "We won't. We'll fight smart. We've trained for this, and we're stronger together. Remember what we talked about, honoring him by fighting for our lives." Mara's expression softened, and Elara could see the flicker of determination return. "You're right. We'll show them what we're made of." As the squadron gathered for a final briefing, Elara scanned their faces. Each pilot wore the marks of battle: tired eyes, determined expressions, and a shared resolve. They had fought hard to get here, and they would not back down now.
Listen up, everyone!
Dax Renault's voice boomed over the crowd, drawing their attention. "Tonight we face a formidable enemy. They're planning an offensive and we need to be ready. We'll split into two groups, one to engage them directly, and the other to flank from the rear." The squadron murmured in agreement, but Elara could sense the underlying fear. She stepped forward, her heart racing. "We've trained for this moment. We know their tactics, and we know each other's strengths. Trust in yourselves and trust in your team. We fight as one." A chorus of affirmations filled the air, and Elara felt a wave of pride wash over her. They were more than just a squadron. They were a family, bound together by shared experiences and unwavering loyalty. "Let's go over the plan one more time," Dax continued, pointing to a map spread out on the table. "Mara, you'll lead the diversionary group. Create as much chaos as possible to draw their attention." "Understood," Mara replied, her voice steady. "Elara, you'll take the lead on the flanking maneuver," Dax instructed, turning to her. "Your knowledge of the terrain will be crucial." "I won't let you down," Elara promised, her determination solidifying. As the meeting concluded, Elara felt a mixture of excitement and dread. This battle would define them, and the stakes were higher than ever. She caught Samira's eye as they prepared to board their fighters, and the unspoken bond between them strengthened Elara's resolve. "Stay sharp out there, okay?" Samira said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You too," Elara replied, squeezing her shoulder. "We'll get through this together." With the sun setting behind them, the squadron climbed into their cockpits, the familiar scent of metal and leather enveloping Elara as she strapped herself in. As the engines roared to life, she took a deep breath, grounding herself in the present. The weight of leadership settled on her shoulders, but she welcomed it. This was her moment to lead. "Squadron, this is it," she said, her voice firm over the comms. "We're going to show them what we're made of. Remember our training and trust each other. Let's make Kyle proud." With a final nod, she initiated the takeoff sequence. The fighter surged forward, the world blurring past as they shot into the sky. The sunset illuminated the horizon in a fiery blaze, a stark contrast to the darkness of the impending battle. As they climbed higher, Elara felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She scanned the landscape below, where patches of green and brown merged into the rugged terrain. "All units, maintain formation," she commanded, her heart racing as she focused on the mission ahead. "Mara, how's your group holding up?" Elara asked, keeping the lines of communication open. "Ready to create some chaos," Mara replied, and Elara could hear the excitement in her voice. "Good. Stick to the plan. We'll rendezvous at the designated point after the diversion." The squadron flew closer to the enemy's position, and Elara felt the tension in the air thicken. She could see the enemy's encampment below, a sprawling mass of tents and vehicles. Her heart raced as she recalled the strategies they had discussed, the intricacies of the upcoming battle. "Squadron, we're approaching the target area. Prepare for engagement," she called, her voice steady. As they neared the enemy's position, Elara could see the soldiers moving with purpose, unaware of the storm about to descend upon them. "On my mark," she declared, adrenaline surging through her. 3, 2, 1, engage." The air exploded with sound as missiles and gunfire filled the sky. Elara felt the familiar rush of battle, the chaos igniting her senses. She twisted and turned, weaving through the enemy's fire as she aimed for their command center. "Direct hit!" one of the pilots shouted, and Elara's heart soared with pride. They were making progress, but the enemy wasn't going down without a fight. "Captain, we've got enemy reinforcements coming in from the north!" another voice shouted over the comms. "Stay focused! We can't let them flank us!" Elara shouted back, her mind racing. They had to hold their ground, but just as they began to gain the upper hand, chaos erupted. A sudden explosion sent shockwaves through the air, and Elara's heart dropped. "No, not again!" she cried, panic rising. "Captain, we're losing control!" Mara's voice came through, urgency lacing her words. "Regroup! We need to fall back and reassess," Elara commanded, her heart pounding as she fought to maintain control. As they pulled back, Elara felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. They had fought hard, but the enemy was relentless, and the battle was far from over. With determination burning in her chest, she steadied herself. "We're not done yet," she thought fiercely. "This is just the beginning." The chaos of battle faded as Captain Elara Voss guided her fighter back to the makeshift base, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. The roar of engines was replaced by the distant sound of sirens and the murmurs of soldiers scrambling to assess the damage. Her heart raced as she landed, the weight of the previous battle pressing heavily on her chest. As she exited the cockpit, Elara felt the eyes of her squadron upon her, some filled with admiration, others with uncertainty. The loss of their comrade weighed heavily on them all, and she knew they needed her now more than ever. "Captain!" Mara Chen rushed over, her face pale but resolute. "What's our next move? We can't just sit back after that." Elara took a moment to collect her thoughts, knowing that the squadron was looking to her for guidance. "We regroup and reassess," she replied, her voice steady. "We need to understand the enemy's movements and fortify our defenses. We can't afford another attack like that." Dax Renault approached, his expression grave. "We lost ground today, Elara. We need to figure out what went wrong before we go out again." "I know," she said, meeting his gaze. "But we also need to focus on the positives. We survived, and we've learned valuable information about their tactics. We can use that to our advantage." As they moved toward the command center, Elara felt a mix of determination and doubt. The squadron gathered around a table, the map of the battlefield spread out before them. Each pilot wore the marks of the fight, scrapes, bruises, and weary eyes. But beneath it all was a fierce resolve. "We need to analyze what happened during the engagement," Dax began, pointing to the map. "The enemy was more prepared than we anticipated. Their reinforcements hit us hard." Elara nodded, her mind racing. "We need to anticipate their moves. If they're planning another offensive, we need to be ready for it. Mara, can you gather intel on their positions?" "On it," Mara replied, determination in her eyes. "Samira, I want you to analyze the data from our last flight," Elara continued. Look for patterns in their movements. If we can predict their strategy, we can counter it. Samira's brow furrowed as she nodded. I'll get right on it. As the squadron members split up to tackle their tasks, Elara felt a moment of solitude wash over her. She stood at the table, staring at the map, her mind swirling with questions. They had lost Kyle, and the weight of that loss crushed her. How could she lead them forward when she felt so lost herself? Dax stepped beside her, sensing her. Turmoil. You did well out there, Elara. You kept the squadron together when it mattered most. I know, but it wasn't enough, she replied, frustration bubbling to the surface. We lost ground, and I can't shake the feeling that I let them down. Leadership isn't about never losing, Dax said gently. It's about how you respond to those losses. You're doing everything you can to protect your team. That's what matters. Elara took a deep breath, absorbing his words. We'll come back stronger. We owe it to Kyle and to each other. As the hours passed, the squadron worked diligently to gather information and strategize. The atmosphere shifted from one of despair to focused determination. Elara felt a sense of purpose rekindle within her as they pieced together intelligence on the enemy's movements. Captain, Mara called out, her voice cutting through the noise. I think I've found something. The enemy is planning a counteroffensive at dawn. We have a narrow window to strike before they mobilize. Elara's heart raced. What's their weak point? They're vulnerable on the western flank. If we can hit them there, we might disrupt their plans, Mara explained, excitement flickering in her eyes. Let's prepare for a night operation, Elara said decisively. We'll move under the cover of darkness and hit them before they can regroup. The squadron murmured in agreement, their spirits lifting with the prospect of action. Elara felt the fire of resolve burn bright within her, igniting hope in the hearts of her team. They were not just soldiers, they were a family, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they finalized their plans, Elara called the squadron together. Listen up, everyone. We've faced difficult odds before, and we've come out stronger. Tonight, we fight not just for ourselves, but for each other and for Kyle. Let's make sure his sacrifice was not in vain. A chorus of affirmations echoed through the room, and Elara felt a surge of pride. They were ready to fight, ready to honor their fallen comrade by standing together. As night fell, the base transformed into a hive of quiet activity. Elara moved among her squadron, offering encouragement and checking equipment. The air was thick with determination, and she felt the bond between them grow stronger with each passing moment. Stay focused and stick to the plan, Elara reminded them as they prepared to take off. We'll rendezvous at the designated point. Trust in each other, and we'll get through this. With one final nod, Elara climbed into her cockpit, the familiar scent of metal and leather wrapping around her like a second skin. She felt the weight of leadership settle over her, but this time, it felt like a mantle of honor. She was not just leading a squadron, she was part of a family that would fight and protect one another no matter the cost. As the engines roared to life, Elara's heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement. They were going into the night, into the unknown, but they were not alone. Together, they would face the reckoning. The moon hung high in the star-speckled sky, bathing the world below in a silvery glow. Captain Elara Voss sat in her cockpit, heart racing as she scanned the darkness. The night operation had begun, and anticipation crackled in the air like static electricity. This was their chance, not just for revenge, but for redemption. Squadron, report in, Elara commanded, her voice steady and clear over the comms. The responses came in quick succession, each pilot's voice a tether to the reality of their mission. Mara, ready and waiting, came the chirp from her wingman, a hint of excitement in her tone. Samira, all systems go, said Samira Patel, her voice calm and reassuring. Dax, locked and loaded, Dax Renault added, his authority grounding the squadron. Let's move out, Elara said, her determination solidifying as they lifted off into the night sky. The engines roared to life, and she felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, They were more than just a squadron. They were family, and tonight they would protect each other. As they flew toward the enemy's position, Elara felt the weight of responsibility settle over her. The plan was straightforward: create a diversion to draw attention, while a smaller team infiltrated the enemy's flank. But this was war, and nothing was ever straightforward. "Approaching the target area," she announced, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the ground below. "Stay sharp, everyone. We'll need to move quickly." The landscape below was a web of shadows, with the occasional glint of metal revealing enemy vehicles. Elara's heart raced as she focused on the mission. They were going to disrupt their plans, avenge their losses, and reclaim their strength. "Remember the plan," Elara reminded them. "Mara, you'll lead the diversion. Create as much chaos as you can. Dax and I will flank from the east." "Copy that," Mara replied, her voice filled with resolve. "Prepare for fireworks." As they approached the enemy camp, Elara felt a surge of adrenaline. The tension was palpable, and she could feel the weight of her squadron's expectations. They were ready to fight, but the fear of failure lingered in the back of her mind. "On my mark," she said, her voice steady. 3, 2, 1, go. Mara's group dove toward the enemy camp, unleashing a barrage of fire. Explosions lit up the night sky, illuminating the chaos below. Elara's heart raced as she watched the enemy scramble, confusion erupting in the darkness. The diversion was working.
"Now's our chance!"
Elara shouted, her instincts kicking in. She and Dax veered off toward the eastern flank, their fighters slicing through the night air. "Stay low," Dax warned as they approached the enemy's command center. "We need to hit them hard and fast." Elara nodded, her focus unwavering. They were so close now. She could see the enemy soldiers moving, preparing for a counterattack. "Let's disrupt their communications. That will buy us time." As they neared the command center, Elara's heart raced. This was the moment they had trained for, the culmination of their efforts. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Ready?" she asked Dax. "Always," he replied, a confident grin in his voice. "Engage!" They unleashed a barrage of missiles, striking the command center with pinpoint accuracy. The explosions sent shockwaves through the air, and Elara felt a rush of triumph. They were making progress, but the battle was far from over. "Captain, enemy reinforcements are on the move," one of the pilots shouted over the comms, urgency ringing in every syllable. "Fall back! We need to regroup," Elara commanded, her heart pounding. They had to be smart about this. They couldn't afford to get caught in the open. As they pulled back, Elara watched the chaos unfold below. The enemy was scrambling, but they were regrouping quickly. "Mara, how's your group holding up?" she asked, concern lacing her voice. "Creating chaos, but we're taking fire," Mara replied, her tone tense. "We need to pull back soon." "Hold tight! We're coming to assist," Elara shouted, her determination surging. They had to protect each other. That was the only way they would survive. Suddenly, a burst of enemy fire lit up the sky around them, and Elara felt her pulse quicken. "Dax, watch your six!" she shouted, pulling hard on the controls to dodge a barrage of bullets. "I see it. Keep moving," Dax replied, his voice steady. They were in the thick of it now, and Elara's instincts kicked into overdrive. She had to lead her squadron through this chaos. "Everyone, stay close!" Elara commanded, her heart racing. They needed to regroup and plan their next move. "We won't let them take us down!" As they maneuvered through the chaos, Elara felt a moment of clarity. This was more than just a battle. It was a test of their strength and resilience. They were a team, and together they could overcome anything. "Captain, we've got a problem," one of the pilots shouted. "We're losing communication with Mara's group." Elara's heart sank. "Mara, do you copy?" she called, desperation creeping into her voice. Static filled her earpiece, and dread washed over her. "Mara, respond!" "Captain, we need to go back for them," Dax urged, urgency in his voice. "No, we can't risk it," Elara shouted, her heart heavy. "We need to finish this mission first. We'll regroup and come back for them." As they pressed on, Elara felt a surge of guilt. They were in this together, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was leading them into danger. "Keep moving," she urged, her voice steady. But just as they began to gain ground, an explosion rocked the air around them, sending debris flying. Elara's heart raced as she fought to maintain control. "Stay focused! We can't lose anyone else!" "Captain, we're taking heavy fire!" one of the pilots shouted, panic lacing their voice. "Regroup! Fall back!" Elara commanded, her heart pounding. They had to find a way out of this alive. As they maneuvered through the chaos, Elara felt her spirit falter. The weight of leadership pressed heavily upon her, and she wondered if they would make it out alive. But just as doubt crept in, a flicker of determination surged within her. "We're fighters!" she shouted, her voice ringing with conviction. "We will not back down!" With renewed resolve, Elara led her squadron through the smoke and chaos, determined to bring them home. This battle was far from over, but they would face it together. The night was alive with chaos, as the sounds of battle echoed in the distance. Captain Elara Voss felt the weight of her squadron's survival pressing heavily on her shoulders. They had fought hard, but the enemy was regrouping, and time was running out. The air was thick with smoke, and the acrid scent of burning fuel, and the faint glow of explosions illuminated the darkness. "Squadron, report in," Elara commanded, her voice cutting through the din. She needed to know where everyone stood. "Mara, holding position but taking fire." "We're pinned down." Mara's voice crackled through the comms, the urgency unmistakable. "Dax, I'm with you," Dax Renault replied, his tone calm, yet filled with the gravity of the moment. "What's the plan?" Elara took a deep breath, her mind racing. They had lost too much already. They couldn't afford to lose anyone else. "We need to create a distraction to draw their fire away from Mara's position. If we can hit their command center again, we might buy enough time for her group to escape." "Understood," Dax replied. "Let's flank them from the north while we provide cover." "Everyone, listen up," Elara called out, her heart pounding. "We're going in for a final assault. This is our chance to turn the tide. We've trained for this moment. We've faced impossible odds before, and we're not backing down now." With that declaration, a surge of determination rippled through her squadron. They were fighters, and they would face the enemy head-on. Elara felt the fire of resolve ignite within her as they prepared for the final push. "Let's move out!" she shouted, initiating the takeoff sequence. The engines roared to life, and the world outside blurred as they ascended into the night sky. As they approached the enemy's encampment, Elara's heart raced. She could see the command center illuminated by flickering lights, the soldiers below moving with purpose. "We're almost there," she murmured to herself. "This ends tonight." "Squadron, prepare to engage," Elara commanded, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "On my mark!" "Ready when you are," Dax replied, his voice steady. 3, 2, 1, engage! The night exploded with sound as they unleashed a torrent of fire, missiles streaking through the darkness. Elara felt the rush of battle, the chaos igniting her senses. They were making their mark, fighting for their survival, for each other. "Direct hit!" one of the pilots shouted, and Elara's heart soared. They were making progress, but the enemy wasn't going down without a fight. She could see the soldiers scrambling, preparing for a counterattack. "Captain, enemy reinforcements are moving in," another pilot warned, urgency lacing their voice. "Stay sharp. We can't let them flank us," Elara shouted, her mind racing. They had to stay focused. "Dax, keep an eye on the command center. We need to disrupt their coordination." As they pressed forward, Elara felt a surge of determination. This was their moment to reclaim their strength, to honor their fallen comrades. They would not back down now. Suddenly, a burst of anti-air fire erupted around them, the sky lighting up with tracer rounds. Elara's heart raced as she dodged and weaved through the chaos. "Stay close, everyone. We can't let them separate us." "Captain, I'm hit," a voice cried out, panic rising. "I can't control my plane." "Hold on, I'm coming!" Elara shouted, her heart pounding. She tightened her grip on the controls, diving toward her struggling squad mate. Just as she reached the pilot, a wave of enemy fire erupted, and Elara felt her stomach drop.
"No, get out of there!"
she yelled, her heart racing. The pilot managed to regain control, but the chaos continued to swirl around them. Elara felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. She couldn't lose anyone else.
"Regroup! We need to fall back!"
Dax urged, urgency in his voice.
"No! We can't retreat now! Not after all we fought for!"
Elara shouted, her determination surging. They had to push forward. They couldn't let fear dictate their actions. "Mara, how's your group holding up?" Elara asked, desperation creeping into her voice.
"Still pinned down? But we're holding strong,"
Mara replied.
"We're ready to provide cover when you give the signal."
"Get ready then. We're going to create a diversion," Elara commanded. "We'll hit them hard and fast." As they prepared for the final assault, Elara felt a mix of excitement and fear. This was it, the moment they had trained for, the culmination of their efforts. She glanced at Dax, who nodded in silent agreement.
"On my mark! 3, 2, 1. Engage!"
Elara shouted, her heart racing as they dove toward the enemy positions. They unleashed a barrage of fire, explosions lighting up the night sky. Elara felt a rush of adrenaline as they struck the command center, sending shockwaves through the enemy ranks.
"Keep pressing forward!"
she urged, her voice steady.
"Captain, we're taking heavy fire!"
one of the pilots shouted, panic lacing their voice.
"Stay focused! We can't lose anyone else!"
Elara commanded, her heart pounding. They had to finish this now. But just as they began to gain ground, the enemy launched a counteroffensive, and Elara felt her heart sink.
"No, not now!"
she cried, desperation tinging her voice.
"Captain, we can't hold them off!"
Dax shouted.
"We need to regroup!" "Hold the line!"
Elara shouted, her determination unwavering.
"We will not back down!"
As the battle raged on, Elara felt a moment of clarity. This was their fight, and they would face it together. They were a family, bound by loyalty and courage. With renewed resolve, she led her squadron through the chaos, determined to protect them at all costs.
"Stay close,"
she commanded, weaving through the hail of enemy fire. They were in this together, and together they would prevail. With every explosion and every burst of fire, Elara felt the tide beginning to turn. They were making their mark, reclaiming their strength. This battle was not just about survival. It was about honoring their fallen comrades and proving their resilience.
"Captain, we've got enemy reinforcements incoming from the west,"
a voice shouted over the comms.
"Prepare for evasive maneuvers,"
Elara commanded, her heart racing.
"We won't let them take us down."
As they maneuvered through the chaos, Elara felt a surge of determination. They were fighters, and they would not back down. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead.
"This is our moment,"
she shouted, her voice ringing with conviction.
"We will not be defeated."
With hearts full of courage, they surged forward, ready to reclaim their destiny. The air crackled with tension as Captain Elara Voss led her squadron into the heart of the chaos. The sounds of battle echoed in her ears, explosions, the roar of engines, and the cries of both allies and enemies. They were deep in enemy territory now, and every heartbeat felt charged with purpose.
"Squadron, regroup on my position,"
Elara commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. The stakes had never been higher, and she could feel the weight of their losses pressing on her shoulders.
"We need to push forward and break their lines."
"Copy that, Captain," Dax Renault replied, his usual calm demeanor unwavering even in the heat of battle. "We're right behind you." As they navigated through the haze of smoke and debris, Elara's heart raced. The enemy was regrouping rapidly, and she knew that time was of the essence. They had to disrupt their command structure to seize the advantage.
"Keep your eyes peeled for their command vehicles,"
Elara shouted.
"If we can take out their leadership, we can throw them into disarray."
"Mara, how's your position?" Elara asked, her eyes darting to the radar.
"Still holding strong, but they're trying to flank us,"
Mara replied, urgency lacing her tone.
"We need to make our move now." "Let's go,"
Elara shouted, adrenaline surging through her. On my mark, 3, 2, 1, engage! The squadron dove toward the enemy positions, unleashing a barrage of missiles and gunfire. The night erupted into chaos, the sky illuminated by explosions. Elara felt the rush of battle coursing through her veins. This was their moment to reclaim their strength. "Direct hit!" Dax called out, a note of triumph in his voice as they struck an enemy vehicle. But the enemy was relentless. Elara's heart sank as she noticed an enemy fighter closing in on them, its guns blazing. "Watch your 6!" she shouted, twisting her fighter to avoid the incoming fire. "Got it!" Dax replied, executing a sharp maneuver that sent the enemy fighter spiraling away. "Keep moving! We can't let them pin us down!" Elara commanded, her voice fierce. They had come too far to turn back now. As explosions rained down around them, Elara felt a surge of determination. They were fighting not just for survival, but for each other. She glanced at her squadron, their faces set with resolve, and knew they would not give up. "Look out!" Samira's voice cut through the chaos, and Elara turned just in time to see an enemy missile streaking toward them. "Evasive maneuvers!" Elara shouted, pulling hard on the controls. The fighter dipped and rolled, narrowly avoiding the blast. The explosion rocked the air, sending a shockwave through her cockpit. "Are you okay?" Dax asked, concern breaking through his usual stoicism. "I'm fine. Keep pushing forward," Elara replied, her heart pounding. They were in the thick of it now, and retreat was not an option. "Captain, we're losing ground," one of the pilots shouted. "We need to regroup." "No, we've come too far," Elara shouted back. "We're not retreating now. We're going to finish this." As they pressed forward, Elara felt the tide of battle beginning to shift. The enemy was faltering, their ranks thinning under the onslaught of Elara's squadron. She could see confusion spreading among the enemy forces, and a flicker of hope ignited within her. "Now's our chance," Elara urged, her heart racing. "Let's hit their command center." With renewed determination, they surged toward the command center, the glow of explosions lighting up the night sky. Elara's instincts kicked in as she maneuvered her fighter, weaving through enemy fire. This was their moment to strike, to take back what had been lost. "Engage on my mark," Elara commanded, adrenaline coursing through her veins. 3, 2, 1, engage! They unleashed a torrent of fire, missiles streaking toward the command center. The explosions erupted with a brilliant flash, illuminating the night. Elara felt a rush of triumph as the enemy command structure crumbled under their assault. "Direct hit! We're making progress!" one of the pilots shouted, excitement palpable in their voice. But just as victory felt within reach, an enemy fighter surged into view, targeting Elara's plane. "Captain, watch out!" Dax shouted, his voice urgent. "Hold on!" Elara shouted, pulling hard on the controls to evade the incoming fire. The enemy fighter closed in, and Elara's pulse quickened. She had to outmaneuver it. With a sharp twist, she dove beneath the enemy fighter, feeling the rush of air as she pulled up and fired back. The enemy plane spiraled away, but Elara could feel the weight of the battle bearing down on her. "Keep pushing! We're almost there!" Elara urged, her voice fierce. They had to stay focused and determined. As they pressed on, Elara felt a surge of hope. They were reclaiming their strength, fighting for each other and for the fallen. This battle was not just about survival. It was about redemption. But then, a sudden explosion rocked the air, and Elara's heart sank. "No, not again!" she cried, panic rising within her. "Captain, we're losing communication with Mara!" Dax shouted, urgency lacing his words. "Get her back!" Elara commanded, her heart racing. They couldn't afford to lose anyone else. "We'll regroup and come for her!" As they fought on, Elara felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. But just as doubt began to creep in, a flicker of determination ignited within her. They were fighters, and they would not back down. "Stay close!" she commanded, maneuvering through the chaos. They were a family, bound by loyalty and courage. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the battle raged on, Elara felt a moment of clarity. This was their fight, and they would face it together. They had come too far to turn back now.
Let's finish this, she shouted, her voice ringing with conviction. For our fallen comrades! For Kyle! With hearts full of courage, they surged forward, ready to reclaim their destiny. This battle would define them, and they would emerge stronger on the other side. The chaos of battle began to settle as the dawn broke over the horizon, casting a golden light across the battlefield. Captain Elara Voss felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration wash over her. The night had been long and brutal, but they had fought valiantly, reclaiming their strength and purpose in the face of overwhelming odds. "Squadron, report in," Elara commanded, her voice steady despite the fatigue that weighed on her. The sounds of engines sputtering and the distant echoes of gunfire faded, replaced by a profound silence that hung in the air. "Mara, here. We're safe." Mara Chen's voice came through, relief evident in her tone. "Dax, still flying," came Dax Renault's voice, unwavering as ever. "Samira, I'm with you," Samira Patel replied, her voice steady, despite the night's horrors. Elara closed her eyes for a moment, thanking the stars above that they had made it through. "We did it, team. We pushed them back," she said, pride swelling within her. As they regrouped, Elara's eyes swept over her squadron. They were battered and bruised, but they were alive. The weight of their losses lingered in the air, but there was a sense of triumph as well. They had faced the storm and emerged stronger. "Mara, I'm so glad you're okay," Elara said, walking over to her wingman. "You did an incredible job creating that diversion." Mara smiled, though her eyes were still shadowed with the memories of the night. "We all did, Captain. We fought as one." "Let's honor Kyle," Elara said, her voice steady as she took a deep breath. "He would have been proud of us. We fought for each other, just as he would have wanted." The squadron gathered around, a somber yet united front. They shared stories of bravery, laughter amid tears, and memories of their fallen comrade. Each story woven into the fabric of their journey together, a testament to their resilience. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the battlefield, Elara felt a sense of clarity wash over her. They had faced darkness together and emerged into the light. "We have a long road ahead," she said, her voice strong. "We'll need to rebuild and regroup, but I know we can do it together." "Absolutely," Dax agreed, stepping forward. "We've proven ourselves, and we'll continue to fight for what's right." Elara nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "We're more than just a squadron. We're a family, and families support each other, no matter what." As they prepared to return to base, Elara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battle had tested them, but it had also forged unbreakable bonds. They were no longer just soldiers. They were warriors, united by their shared experiences and the sacrifices they had made. As they took off into the sky, the landscape below transformed from a battlefield to a canvas of hope. Elara glanced at her squadron, each pilot a testament to courage and resilience. They had fought for each other and would continue to do so, no matter the challenges ahead. "Captain, what's our next move?" Mara asked, her voice steady. Elara smiled, determination shining in her eyes. "We'll regroup, assess our losses, and honor our fallen. Then we'll plan our next steps. We can't let fear guide our actions. We have to be ready for whatever comes next." As they flew toward the rising sun, Elara felt a surge of hope. They had faced the storm and emerged stronger. Together, they would face the future, ready to protect each other and fight for what was right. In that moment, Elara knew they would rise from the ashes of their losses, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. They were a family, bound by loyalty, courage, and the unwavering promise to fight for one another. And as the sun broke free from the horizon, illuminating the sky in brilliant hues, Elara felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was just the beginning of their journey, a journey of healing, resilience, and unwavering strength. "Together," she whispered,
her heart filled with conviction. Always together.